Welcome to RSI Help YouTube, a regular feature on my newsletter, DQ News, which you can get by signing up over my website, rsihelp.com, is a column called Ask DQ, where people can write in their questions about repetitive strain injury. And here we have a question from a reader. I would love to hear about hypermobility as a possible cause for developing an RSI. And I believe that hypermobile people are more at risk for RSI since their ligaments don't support normal musculoskeletal range of motion. So to answer this question, we have our medical expert, Dr. Robert Markison. He's a San Francisco-based hand surgeon with nearly 40 years of experience. And he's been on our show many times with wonderful episodes with him. So Dr. Markison, can you explain, first of all, what hypermobility is and how it could be a risk factor for repetitive strain injury?
Well, another way to look at it is ligamentous laxity, ligaments that are just a little bit looser. The big print edition is called Ehlers-Danlos, and that's where you've got an extreme flexibility of joints, and you never want to exploit these loose or lax ligaments because the price you pay will be an increased excursion or movement of potentially vulnerable musculotendinous units. But you remember that it's not only tendons that are moving, you have nerves that are moving, a lesser amplitude perhaps, and certainly not bearing the load that tendons would and do. But if you're hypermobile and you stretch to an extreme, for example, then you will force the tendons against the median nerve in the carpal tunnel, and it's forced against the undersurface of the flexor retinaculum, increasing the risk of carpal tunnel. If you're kind of a curl it up and get fetal sleeper with hypermobile joints, you're going to increase the risk of stretch, stress, strain, compression as well. So in addition to exposing moving members, muscle tendon units, to the extremes of motion with associated risk of strain, you can compress nerves in the neighborhood. So you never show off. You don't want to exploit ligamentous laxity in the schoolyard and prove that you can put this over to here because you don't need to. Now, many, perhaps most of my prodigy level children that I take care of who are studying at the SF Conservatory and elsewhere can do and be who they are, very nimble at the upper reach of a violin because they can, come in with strain because they've done too much too often because they can. I mean, if you look at the great Paganini and his 24 caprices, impossible to play unless you had his condition called Marfan's, where it's ligamentous laxity and hypermobility, arachnodactyly, spidery fingers, to terrorize all subsequent generations of violinists who do it because maybe they can. Whether or not they have Marfan's, they have ligamentous laxity and ultimately come in with stretch, strain, and tendonitis from it. They're not doomed, but they have to cap this showing off business. And so I advise them not to exploit their hypermobility for risk of strain. But I also tell them to self-record, play the instrument for 5 minutes, listen back in real time, cycles of action and repose, propelling the musical envelope and musical improvement. And they've done very well with that.
If someone is hypermobile, like for instance, I'm not, but I know people who, if they're touching something, this digit, then I think it's the MCP joint, will collapse inward. So they can't hold, I think they need to train themselves not to do that so that they're not, it's like a ballet dancer with hyper extended knees. You know, they train you to keep the bones in alignment and not collapse back into that hypermobility. And I think when you're using the computer, if your joints do tend to collapse, you have to be more aware of, you know, hand use so that you're not overstressing that hypermobile joint. Am I right?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And so some of my patients, we use a little kinesio tape cut into strips. So they don't live with it all day, obviously, but put a little strip here, a little strip here, so that you can keep a comfortable position without collapse of joints. And then they kind of get it kinesthetically, understand, oh, okay, I've gone too far, I've gone too far, gone too far. I'm going to cap it. I won't compromise function and work product, but no reason to exploit hypermobile members.
That is a great idea. It'd be good. It'd be good, kind of like training wheels,
Training
because I think
wheels.
eventually you would learn how to hold
Right.
your hands without the kinesio tape.
Right. Tune into any Olympic diving event and you'll see that they're all taped on their torsos to avoid overflexion, over rotation, torquing, so on, so on. And then as they graduate, they may not need that, but it's certainly a good governing influence so that they're not either making a mess in the Olympics or a mess at work.
All right. Well, thank you so much for that explanation, Dr. Markison. I think our reader will be very happy to learn about hypermobility of the joints. We hope to have you back very soon.
Always a pleasure.